This leads to one of the best chapter transitions in any Wolfe book that there is. Where as they leave,
the way the chapter ends.
Wolfe is like, it's so funny that they're this angry about it. You'd think that you were going to cut him up and eat him. And Pratt says, yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then the chapter ends.
Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Wordy Pair We're going to start again. I did this before.
No, I think we should use that.
Hey everybody, it's the Wordy Pair Podcast. I'm Rudy.
I'm Justin.
Yeah, and today we're going to be talking about one of the preeminent Nero Wolfe stories. Possibly the longest Nero Wolfe story. Because the paperback that I have goes all the way out to like 270 pages or more. A little bit more than that. This is the, I believe, third Nero Wolfe book?
Was it really that early?
No, I'm sorry, you're right. It is the sixth. The sixth. Fer-de-Lance, League of Frightened Men, Rubber Band, Red Box, Too Many Cooks, and Some Buried Caesar. This book was originally published back all the way in 1938, it sounds like. And, this is a fantastic Nero Wolfe book. And I mean, I probably should mention that the author's name is Rex Stout. If you don't know that, you need to watch more episodes that we talk about Rex Stout. Or episodes that we don't talk about Rex Stout, because he often gets an honorable mention even when we're not talking about him.
Or you need to now take that name, which has been attributed to an author, and use it to divine the location of his books.
Yeah, that would work. Try your local bookstore?
Yeah, there's lots of those now.
I mean local in the electronic sense.
Try your local Amazon bookstore.
Well, no, there are multiple electronic bookstores these days. It's, there is some competition, not amazing competition, but there is some competition. You can go visit a variety of websites that will sell you an ebook copy of Some Buried Caesar by Rex Stout. So get on that now. Yeah, it's a good book and you should read it. And if you haven't read it, and you're going to listen to this as like a way to vicariously read it through us, you're going to be disappointed. Not because we suck, which might also be true, but because the book is so good that you should read it regardless of any other, requirements or obligations that you have in life. Like, this is a book that should be read by everyone.
Although we will say that it's becoming pretty apparent that one of us is certainly atrocious, but we can't decide which one just yet.
We're not sure that we're two separate entities, to be perfectly honest. So,
That's fair enough.
It might be that, that the entity that in the fifth dimension is us is like 60% atrocious, but like I got 40 and you got 60 or 80 or whatever. I don't know. So this is a book that is not just especially long, and not just especially good, but it's also unusual in the sense that this is a book that takes place entirely outside of Nero Wolfe's Brownstone. And of course, this is a stepping off point for many of the funny parts of the book, where Wolfe does something to make himself more comfortable. And because the only person around who knows Wolfe well is Archie invariably recognizes it.
Yes, to everyone else it appears that Nero Wolfe is hanging around helping to solve a case, when in reality, while he is, by proxy, doing that, many of his motives are simply because he wants a bigger chair to sit down in.
And a nicer bed.
Yes, and this is one of the things that makes reading Nero Wolfe stories a real joy.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
We have Archie and Nero Wolfe setting out for an orchid competition at a fair that is going to have other competitions.
Yes.
Most notably
it's
bull
funny
judging
because
competition.
It's very clearly pointed out throughout this book in several points that this is not just Nero Wolfe going to an orchid contest. This is Nero Wolfe going to an orchid contest for the purposes of spite.
yeah, he's going specifically to be petty at someone.
Yeah, there's a guy named Shanks who had some orchids that got an award in a previous exhibition, and Wolfe is going there to just show that Shanks's orchids are garbage, and everyone else knows it too. That's the best part.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're spoiling that one then, huh? Can I give the full spoil on that?
I already told people to stop listening to this and go read the book. So,
well,
we are in full spoiler territory at this point.
All right, yeah. So he does. By the end of the book, he has won 3 medals and the
Shanks
championship.
has gotten, quote, the horse laugh.
Yeah. And it's all such a small part of the story, too. There's just a couple of brief mentions, getting the story as we are from Archie Goodwin's perspective, about how Wolfe and Shanks are hanging out and chatting together, even though Wolfe is there
pretending to be amicable. Yes.
Yeah. And those couple
There's
of
also
times...
a very funny typo in the paperback that is a result of part of this.
Oh, is it the 2 instead of 2?
No, it's the exhibitor part.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. That? Because Lily Rowan comes up and she's talking to Archie. And in the paperback version, she says, "You're an exhibitor, exhibit." And his reply is, "Not exhibitionist, exhibitor." And then he goes on to show her the orchids. Or, pawn her off to Wolfe to have him show her the orchids. But clearly, what they've done is they've taken that word, exhibitor, that Lily Rowan says. What she actually said in the original, I'm pretty sure, is exhibitionist, just to rile up Archie. And the editor didn't realize this was a joke, and so said, "Oh, well, exhibitionist isn't the right word here. Exhibitor is the right word." And then that same editor didn't look at the next damn sentence and see that he was being contradicted.
I'm not 100% sure that's true, because I remember stumbling over that one, and I was like, wait, what was really meant here? And my interpretation of it was that Archie was the one making a joke by changing the word. He was implying that she was looking at him more as an exhibitionist than an exhibitor.
Well,
and
hold on a second. I'm going to go get my first edition copy, and we're going to look this up.
Yeah, we can discover this right now.
Yeah, I can cut out the silence. I'll be right back.
Yeah, thankfully we know someone who has first edition copies of Nero Wolfe books. Yea, though he doth thumb through the pages.
All right, I've got my copy. Now, I'm going to have to find it, which might take a few seconds.
A few seconds? Well, you have read this book like a bajillion times.
I have indeed.
Yes, you read Nero Wolfe books like I read Terry Pratchett Discworld books.
I probably read Nero Wolfe books more than you read Terry Pratchett Discworld books. I
have read Witches Abroad almost 40 times.
Yeah, that's peanuts. I've read many of Wolfe's books probably 20 to 30 times.
Okay,
not just one isolated one.
So we're in the same range.
Yes. Hold on, I'm almost there.
I love that I'm almost there feeling. He knows he's closing in on it. He's been here before. He recognizes the territory.
Well, the thing is that I found the pages where Archie's in jail, and I know it's before that. So I can't be that far off. There we are. You know what? You're right. In the original, she says you're an exhibitor. Go ahead and exhibit. And then he says not exhibitionist exhibitor. I always thought that was a typo.
I think that was Archie's sarcasm. I think that's how it was intended to be taken.
The thing is that Archie's not usually that sarcastic in a sense. Like he
was with Lily Rowan in that whole book, though.
Okay, that's fair, I guess. But still, I always assumed that was a mistake.
There were some mistakes in the book.
Yeah, the paperbacks always get the Crime Line paperbacks had bad editors. They always pop up a couple of mistakes here and there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to find a bad editor.
Yes.
Yeah, like I thought I was bad at editing my own books, but then I saw what professionals did, and I was like, okay, all right,
Yeah,
we're just gonna stick with this.
I find it surprising that I am typically of better quality than the average paperback editor, which, I mean, at least in finding typos.
Well, I think
grammatical errors and such.
I think that in this sense we were both suffering from the Gell-Mann effect.
Possibly.
Like we've both been surrounded by people who were incompetent at their job in multiple places, and then we just assumed that editors would be more competent than we are at editing.
Yeah. Kind of a Ricardian problem.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, shall we talk more about this book?
Yes, let's talk about this book. This book starts in a fun way.
All right, that's a wrap.
Well, I was hoping you would hop in there, but sure.
Okay, yeah. So Nero Wolfe Nero Wolfe and Archie are on their way to this competition, and due to running over some glass at some point somewhere.
Well, they're not sure what they ran over, right?
Yeah. Well, I think he said it was glass. There was he found some glass.
He says the people at the garage must have run it over some glass or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So
right, because basically what happened is that they're driving down the freeway. Happy and relaxed at moderate speed, and then all of a sudden, a tire blows out. Archie swerves. The car ends up running into a tree. It is no longer mobile. Wolfe is safe in the back. And we're not going to
forget that.
What's that?
We're not going to forget that for the whole book, because Wolfe will not stop reminding Archie.
Yeah. Wolfe consistently talks about how Archie has managed to drive his car into a tree. Can he drive yours, kind of thing?
Yes. Well, that was the joke at the beginning of the book when he was discussing what they were going to do, and Wolfe suggested that he goes somewhere and asks to borrow a car because his assistant crashed one into a tree, and Archie was like, "Well, that's probably not the best way to open if you want to actually borrow a car."
Yeah. They find themselves a few hundred yards from a big house, and between them and that house is a big, meadow that is fenced in. And so they're like, well, it would suck to walk all the way around this fence. Let's just go through. We'll hop the fence and we'll get to the house and we'll get some help, which turns out to not be the best idea.
Yeah, in fact, it's one of the great blunders, I would say, that could have been much more disastrous than, say, an assistant swerving into a tree.
Yeah.
This is largely because the meadow contains a grand champion bull, as far as anyone knows.
Yes.
And soon, Nero Wolfe and Archie find that out as well.
They find it out in a very... Well, they find it out in two ways. One worrisome and one less worrisome. Because as they're walking across the pasture, Archie says, "I wonder why they had this pasture fenced in." And Wolfe says, "Oh, it's a cow pasture." And with his walking stick, he points at a round lump of cow material. And they're like, "Okay, well, we better keep walking." And then all of a sudden, this giant Guernsey bull appears. And it is not the most friendly of bulls. By no means. Wolfe is an interesting character in the sense that he's been around the block a few times. He's like, Archie, have you ever seen a bullfight? And Archie's like, no, I live in America. And Wolfe's like, okay, I'm going to explain to you how to get away from this bull and also to draw it away from me. And you're going to do that because you're the one who can run fast. I can't run fast. Archie, of course, says, whatever, what do I have to do?
Meanwhile, Archie is very obliging here.
Yes. Well, he kind of has to be. He knows that Wolfe is not going to be able to dodge a charging bull, so Archie's like, all right, I'm going to do this. It's funny because at one point, Wolfe is like, I told you to stay perfectly still, right? You moved your finger there, and I saw a muscle in his neck tighten. And it's like, Wolfe is way more observant than you might think he would be. So anyway, Archie makes a mad dash for it, drawing the bull toward him. He reaches the other side of the fence and vaults over it like an Olympic athlete. Meanwhile, Wolfe jumps on top of a big rock that fortunately the bull can't charge over. So Wolfe is going to stand there and wait for help. Archie, kind of falls on his rear end on the safe side of the fence to discover that he is being applauded by a woman who if you read more Nero Wolfe books, you'll get to know very well, Lily Rowan. She becomes a recurring friend/helper for Archie in a lot of these stories. And
she's almost a female Archie Goodwin.
I mean, she doesn't have the intelligence of the Goodwin.
No, not quite, but she definitely has a lot of pluck.
She significantly lacks the intelligence of a Goodwin. There's, I believe it's in A Right to Die that she believes that Omaha is in Oklahoma or something like that. It's
I won't say that.
Archie comments like, "Yeah, we had driven through Nebraska on a trip once." But she's fun, and she takes a liking to Archie immediately. But the more important thing to deal with right now, well, there's two things, because there's one guy who's waving a shotgun around. Part of the reason why the bull was agitated was this guy was yelling and waving a shotgun around. He threatens to shoot, but at that point it's kind of a moot point. In fact, Lily Rowan explains to him that's a moot point. Why didn't you shoot earlier? You're going to be court-martialed already. But also there is, what's her name? Carolyn Pratt, I believe? She's the daughter of... Yes. The daughter of the elder
Thomas
Pratt. Who's Thomas Pratt? Okay. And she
I thought I was going to be the one that couldn't remember the names.
For some reason, I couldn't remember Thomas Pratt's first name, because he's just called Pratt over and over again.
Another day or two and I would have forgotten it. I just finished reading it yesterday.
Yeah, I read this like 2 or 3 weeks ago last, so... But anyway, yeah, so Carolyn Pratt grabs a car, they open up the gate, they drive through, they pick up Wolfe, they drive around the bull, and they escape. There's a funny moment where, what does she say? As she drives up to Wolfe, she says, Dr. what's his name from that old book?
Oh, Dr. Livingston. It was Dr.
Yeah,
Livingston.
Dr. Livingstone, I presume. And Wolfe replies in kind. Miss Stanley, I believe he calls her, and they drive out of the pasture. So this kind of starts the story. Wolfe and Archie are kind of stranded. There's a bull. We've been introduced to the bull, but now we get to learn about the bull, and that's what happens over the next, say, chapter and a half, where finally Thomas Pratt comes home, and discussions begin, because Thomas Pratt is doing something that, I don't know. I guess to me it doesn't sound that bizarre, but at the same time, I'm not a cattleman, so I guess I don't.
It's
have
not
that
bizarre.
It's
It's specifically not bizarre because for the majority of people, what he's doing makes more sense than the handful of people that object to it.
Right. So maybe you should go on a little bit with what happens in the evening.
Absolutely. All right, so there's apparently this big argument that's taking place. Thomas Pratt is being harangued by these gentlemen from the...
Guernsey League.
The Guernsey League, thank you. And they are upset with him because of what he's going to do with his prize-winning bull, which he paid an enormous sum of money for.
Yep.
He paid in, what was this, 1930s dollars or 1940s?
1938, yeah.
And yeah, so almost 1940s dollars, $45,000 for a grand champion bull with a pretty good pedigree and a sizable lineage.
Yes.
And the person he bought it from is, I believe he was he caretaking
Monty
it?
McMillan.
Was he caretaking it for Thomas Pratt in this book?
No, it was Monty McMillan's bull. And Monty had a herd, but his herd died from anthrax a couple of months ago.
Right. Oh, okay, yeah. So he was there at the beginning when everyone came to harass Thomas Pratt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so these gentlemen are really upset, and we don't see why right away. Wolfe and Archie are there observing this argument that's taking place, and these couple of gentlemen leave with a sort of thinly veiled threat that some action will be taken. Could
Yeah,
mean
we'll do
legal,
something
could
about
mean
this.
underhanded, but it seems like it's all just people being upset.
This leads to one of the best chapter transitions in any Wolf book that there is. Where
Oh,
as they
yes.
leave,
Yeah, the way the chapter
Wolf
ends.
Wolf is like, it's so funny that they're this angry about it. You'd think that you were going to cut him up and eat him. And Pratt says, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do." And then the chapter ends.
It is
And
fantastic.
then the next chapter begins with Wolf being totally flabbergasted. And Archie makes a point to say, Wolf is hard to flabbergast, but this really got him, to the point where he repeated something that he had just been told. He said, "Eat that bull, Mr. Pratt." And Pratt says, "Yes."
So, as it turns out, the bull, the $45,000 that he spent on that bull was an outrageous sum.
Yes.
But he expected to make gains off of this because he was pulling a publicity stunt by having a barbecue to eat this prize-winning bull, because he is also the owner of a chain of cafeterias that are lovingly referred to as Pratterias by their customers.
There's another great joke there where Wolf is asking Archie about Pratterias, and Archie's like, I'm glad that we found out that the guy who started these is Pratt. His name's Pratt, because I was worried that they were called that because it was a place where you sit on your Pratt and get something to eat. And Wolf's like, I know. Did you come up with Pratt yourself? And Archie's like, no, it's in Shakespeare. And Wolf's like, Murr.
Well, I mean, isn't that one of the origins of the pratfall?
Yeah, it is. It's actually a little surprising that Wolf wasn't aware of it.
It's even funnier that Archie knew it and he didn't. That's because that's not usually the case for anything relating to literature or history or anything like that, really.
But of course, Wolf's out of his element. He's not in the brownstone.
Yeah, it's like playing a video game where you have like a 10% loss in armor if you're walking in a certain area. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
We're nerds.
He's got a debuff.
Yeah. So he finds out they're going to eat this bull, and a couple of things take place, a few conversations as things wind down, as Wolf is getting ready to go to this festival. And it turns out that
it's perhaps worth noting real quick before we get into that this is one of the largest casts in a Wolf book that you'll probably see. And when I say cast, I mean like cast of potential suspects.
Yeah.
Like this book, from a mystery perspective, from the reader's perspective, is wide open. We are introduced to multiple members of the Guernsey League, multiple members of Pratt's family, multiple people who are, cattle ranchers, multiple people from Osgood's family, multiple people who are associated with both of these families. Like, if your métier is to like look at these mystery stories and kind of like pick random characters and say, well, what if it's him? What if it's him? What if it's him? You're going to have a lot of work to do in this one.
Yeah, good freaking luck.
Right?
But really...
And yet, yeah.
You don't get enough information until
that's
the end
thing,
of the book.
Is that you do get enough information about most of these characters to say, okay, well, there could be a reason why he's doing this. And so, like, it's... Yeah, anyway, go ahead.
It's a pretty wide open mystery.
Yeah.
In terms of it could be anyone. We get one of the first instances here where Wolf seizes on an opportunity to find more comfort.
Yeah.
Because Archie has put himself in a position where he is going to get a car ride to the fair and a little bit of assistance from the daughter of Thomas Pratt to get the car fixed and arrange for their being taken to a hotel.
Right.
But before that can happen, you already have Wolf talking about how large the beds are. And apparently he tried the bed when nobody was looking, because he mentions to Archie how comfortable it is.
Yeah.
And he also is very complimentary of the decor.
Well, so this is another fun little... Like, Stout does this a lot. He has these really fun little character bits. And, like, you can almost blink and miss them. But, like, Thomas Pratt is a restaurateur, to put it kindly. And Pratt has a son, and Pratt's son is basically an architect. And they basically ask Wolf, Wolfe, do you know anything about architecture? And Wolfe says, well, I like this house. I can tell you that. And Pratt's son's Jimmy Pratt, I believe, right? Is
Yeah.
His response is, ha, wowee, because Jimmy Pratt designed the house, and Thomas Pratt thought that Jimmy Pratt was kind of not doing a very good job as an architect. Not to mention that there's no money in architecture, which Thomas Pratt values. So he's not his son. He's like his nephew or something, right? Thomas Pratt's not married.
Oh yeah, it must have been that.
Yeah, it's niece and nephew. I'm sorry, I made that. It's easy to make that mistake. They're definitely, they talk to each other and they're pretty close, and anyway. So yeah, it's a fun little character bit where you get this element that Jimmy Pratt designed the house. Thomas Pratt doesn't like the house. Thomas Pratt thinks Jimmy Pratt is wasting his time being an architect, and then Wolfe inadvertently steps in and validates Jimmy Pratt without meaning to, which is just kind of a nice little character thing that you would need to really be thinking about to write that. And in order to, even as a reader, you need to be paying attention to kind of pick up on what has to be in there for that to work out. I thought it was I always love that little moment where his response is, ha, wowee,
Well, it was nice because up to that point, it was like 2 paragraphs of Thomas Pratt talking Jimmy down, and
yeah,
he's basically saying he's good for nothing, and then he mentions to Wolfe about the architecture and everything, and Wolfe says, well, I think this house is pretty good. And so it's like this whole time Jimmy's being insulted, but then someone whose opinion is widely respected in these stories is complimentary to Jimmy, and it doesn't really make any sort of rift that they demonstrate between Thomas Pratt and Wolfe, but it's a bit surprising to Thomas Pratt because it's hard to tell if it raises his esteem of Jimmy at all, or if it's just kind of, it passes over just by the reactions that everyone has in that moment in the story. But we should probably delve into the mystery a little bit now, because we do have this situation where Wolfe has contrived to, instead of going to the hotel,
you're missing a step, because what happens next is that another group of people comes over to the Pratt house, and it's Osgood's son, Clyde, I believe, Clyde Osgood, and I think Osgood's name is Fred or Frederick. He's like a big landowner in this particular county, which is near Crowfield, New York. And Clyde Osgood comes by, and he does a very strange thing. He makes a bet with Pratt. He basically says to Pratt, I bet you that in the next week you won't barbecue Hickory Caesar Grindon, which is the name of the bull. And he says, I'll bet you $10,000. And Pratt says, well, I mean, do you have $10,000 to bet? And he's like, this is where they there's some nice conflict here. Some very well written conflict here where Pratt questions whether Clyde Osgood has that kind of money. And Clyde says, well, call my dad. My dad will pay for it if it's necessary. And so Pratt calls Osgood, and Osgood basically says, "What any debt my son owes you will be paid immediately," and hangs up the phone. And so like this bet gets made.
It's
Osgood
arguably
goes off.
It's the most important part of the story. It's the part of the mystery that you really could sit down and solve for yourself if you wanted to, and it might be the only part that you can without a lot more information. Because it is later revealed that Nero Wolfe immediately set his mind to the task in that moment. At the end of the book, he kind of says that he was, having nothing better to do, he was trying to figure out what exactly Clyde's game was here. And it wasn't a tricky one to do, even for the reader, but the whole point of all of this is that Nero Wolfe is the only one that really did it. So you can kind of see, it's like, okay, there's this bull that is probably under, pretty good guard, especially after this wager is being made. And so you have a situation where someone has claimed that this particular bull, is not going to be barbecued on a day
Well,
that has been chosen
yeah.
for it to be barbecued, which can lead you to several conclusions that we'll talk about later. But, obviously one of them is he might try to kidnap the bull so that it can't
Sure.
be eaten that day and then bring it back and be like, haha, give me the money.
One of the things that Wolfe says later on is that the idea of Clyde Osgood taking Hickory Caesar Grindon and flying him, a bovine Pegasus, to the moon is as likely as many of the other possibilities that people are mulling over.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good comedy in this book. Like, Wolfe is out of his element, and so he's a little bit... Like,
Very
he's
irritable.
a little bit more... Yeah, irritable, but also, like, he returns stuff. He doesn't just order people out. He returns stuff because he can't order people out. He doesn't have the authority to do so in most cases. We have a lot of the police, the local police, kind of prickling over Wolfe's assessment of the situation. We have a lot of jokes between Lily Rowan and Archie Goodwin. There's a lot of really good comedy in this book, like one-liners, multi-liners.
Almost
all
every
kinds
other
of fun
page.
little jokes. Yeah, pretty much. It's funnier than a lot of Wolfe books too, which is maybe unusual, of course, but not. But like, yeah, it's really good in that sense too. Like, the comedic nature of the events is very well handled by Stout.
And if Stout's good at anything, it's handling the nature of people. We also... He writes good murders, and he writes good solutions to the murders. And in this particular book, we do have some murders. We ended up, after a few things are said and done, with Thomas Pratt inviting Wolfe to stay in his house rather than going to the hotel. And from his house, he can then go and, go to the exhibition.
He can have Archie guard the bull.
Yeah, well, that comes as an extra. So them staying there
it's not
means
really
that...
an extra. It's kind of the way that Wolfe pries his way in there. He's like, we don't get to see Wolfe negotiate with Pratt, but the implication in the story is that Wolfe said to Pratt, "Hey, you want a good detective to watch your bull tonight? I can do that Archie can do that for you."
That's the best part too. It's like, he's clearly a good detective, and he's like, "Hey, you want a good detective to do this? Archie will."
Exactly.
But yes, it's in a sense, it is Wolfe getting a comfortable bed and probably a good meal or two, and they've already established that the place has good beer.
Nice casements.
Yes. But as is the case with most detective stories, we then have a body, because Archie Goodwin is in fact on his shift to guard the bull, and he gets mildly distracted by Lily Rowan. So they're sitting outside the meadow and they're having a discussion because she just sort of happened to be out there watching someone else, which all of this is kind of giving you the veneer of there's something going on and we probably have clues here that we're not understanding yet, but Rex Stout will place characters in this manner to give you things to lead you off in one direction or another, to have fun with the mystery.
Yeah.
And so Lily Rowan is there, and she ends up finding Archie, and they sit outside the fence, and they're just sort of chatting.
I mean, real quick before you go on, it's worth noting that this is one of the great elements of the Rex Stout mysteries, is that he throws you false leads, but at no point do you ever feel like the mystery can't be solved by you, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, if you're reading a Sherlock Holmes story, the first time Sherlock Holmes says, "Oh, this particular dirt can only come from this particular county in England," you give up, because you know that the story is
outside your knowledge base.
It's going to be outside your knowledge. But with a Wolfe story, he's very good at avoiding that sort of feeling of like, well, I'm just going to read this and see what happens. And he does it while being not as complicated as, like, what's her name?
Agatha Christie.
Agatha Christie
it
gets
is
sometimes.
Actually one of the things I think makes the Rex Stout books better than Agatha Christie mysteries.
Yeah.
Is that they are, despite how eccentric Nero Wolfe is and how much eccentricity there is in most Nero Wolfe books, they're probably the most down-to-earth murder mysteries I can think of, short of,
Yeah.
Anything else that would just be called a hard crime novel, which those kind of novels pretend at being more down-to-earth mysteries, but they're really just like hard-boiled cop detective novels where there's not really much of a mystery at all.
Right.
So the Rex Stout novels are probably the best at that I'm aware of.
So, Archie is out there. He's talking with Lily Rowan. It's nighttime. They're supposed to be guarding the bull. Archie finds a body.
Yes, in fact, they don't just find a body, but they find a body in the meadow with the bull rooting through the body. And the implication, of course, is that this person was killed by the bull.
Right.
So there's a big hullabaloo. Everyone comes down, and they have to tie the bull back and get people in there to investigate what's going on. And it turns out that, lo and behold, it's Clyde Osgood, the one who made the bet with Thomas Pratt. So, from a murderer's perspective, or from the perspective of a natural death, we get a coinciding incident where it's implied that a bull has gored Clyde Osgood. But at the same time, you, the reader, know you're reading a mystery novel, so you're already thinking to yourself, but was he gored by a bull? What happened here?
Yeah. He may have been gored by a bull, but he may have been gored by a bull for a reason, or that may have been like orchestrated by someone. And Stout doesn't actually let you sit with that assumption for very long. He breaks it down for you pretty early on, almost in this. I think it's in the same or in the next chapter, where Wolfe and Archie have a discussion about it. We'll get to that in a minute. But basically, Archie finds the bull kind of rooting around Clyde Osgood's body. The police come, a doctor comes, Frederick Osgood comes, and Osgood is a very interesting character because he kind of has Archie describes him as having a ducal crown. He feels like he's nobility, and he acts like it. And even Wolfe says, when Archie mentions this to Wolfe, even Wolfe says, well, a crown doesn't chafe him. so Osgood comes to the Pratt house, and he is incredibly, overwrought because his son is dead, for one, and for two, to Osgood, he doesn't seem to be able to understand what exactly happened, because he believes that his son is skilled enough in dealing with cattle that he wouldn't have been gored by a bull at night, even by himself. That he wouldn't have put himself in that situation, and that even if he was in that situation, he would have handled it better than that,
Yeah.
And so
despite
the doctor's there, the police are there, and Osgood is ranting and raving, but nobody really pays him that much attention. He's a distraught father.
He is being told by everyone from the doctor to everyone around him that it's silly to make his assumptions. He was clearly in the pasture, and the bull had blood on its horns. He was clearly gored by the bull.
Right.
And Osgood decides that he wants to employ Nero Wolfe to solve the murder. He's convinced his son has been killed.
It's a little bit more, a little bit weirder than that, because Wolfe and Archie are up in their room, and they have a little talk where Wolfe kind of opens the bag a little bit and says to Archie, hey, you may have come to these conclusions that I have come to, but you should restrain yourself to talking about direct evidence when you talk to doctors or the police, because we don't want to get stuck here because there's actually something going on. And so already you've got this hint that Wolfe knows something that nobody else does at this point. And so Archie is kind of mulling this over as the night finishes out. Osgood comes and leaves. The doctor comes and goes. Osgood calls the police, but the police basically leave Osgood and say, "Well, you don't have any probable cause or evidence for us, so what do you expect us to do?" It's the next day that things start to happen, where basically Wolfe and Archie go to their this is another funny moment, because they had a room reserved at Crowfield, but they gave it up so that Wolfe could have that one night at Pratt's. And then the next day, they have to go get another room at Crowfield, which is impossible because of or nearly impossible because of the
exhibition.
The exhibition, yeah. And so, they finally get a room, but it's very dingy and like it's right outside of a construction project and yada yada yada. So Wolfe is there and he's getting all the orchids ready, and I believe that it's Osgood that goes up to Wolfe, and Wolfe and Osgood start to talk about this situation, and it's through this that Osgood says, hey, why were you there? Kind of implying that Wolfe may have been in the employ of Pratt beforehand.
Oh yeah,
and Wolfe gets very offended because again, Wolfe doesn't want to stay there. He doesn't want to deal with this problem. Even though it's been hinted strongly already that he has information that nobody else has. And so Osgood's like, so Wolfe is immediately very snappy at Osgood because he doesn't want to get roped into the situation.
Right.
But finally, Osgood gets Wolfe to open up. And Wolfe says, I offer you an opinion for $1,000. And Osgood's like, $1,000 for an opinion? I mean... that's
an
pretty
opinion
steep.
from Nero Wolfe. That's a good opinion.
It better be a good opinion, yeah. And Wolfe says, I sell it as an opinion, but it is the truth. And it is my educated conclusion, so to speak. And that is my bread and butter. I don't throw them around willy nilly. And so Osgood, says, all right, fine, $1,000. What's your opinion? And Wolfe's like, your son was murdered. And this starts the whole plot, in the sense of the plot as a murder mystery. Because now Wolfe has just opened up to someone who isn't going to keep quiet about it like Archie is. And now Wolfe convinces Osgood that there are some very good reasons why a Clyde Osgood should not have been found like that in the pasture. So, well, I guess it's time to head back to the police.
Yeah, he heads back to the police, all right, and by heading back to the police, he basically is doing what Nero Wolfe wants him to do, which is to get the police to start an investigation coinciding with his own, so that when they need the facts that the police can easily gather, they're there to be had, because Wolfe is already surmising that the police are not, well, maybe not incompetent, but they don't have the motivation to really carry through and solve this case.
Yeah, and we're talking about 1930s, so it's also possible that they don't have the same kind of equipment that Kramer does, for instance.
Yeah,
like the fact that one of the issues is that Wolfe tells Archie at some point to go take a picture of the bull, and Archie says, "I didn't bring a camera," and Wolfe says, "Always have one from now on." This is at a point in time where people in general didn't carry cameras around.
Yeah.
And so you had to be lucky to have one, and it was even possible for a crime scene or a suspected crime scene to come and go without significant photography of the subjects. So it's one of those things where you have to really kind of throw yourself back to a time where all these tools were actually expensive and local police departments maybe couldn't even afford to be slinging a camera around all the time and developing pictures of everything. It's a different time, and it's another fun element of the story. Because, of course, when Stout was writing this, he was writing it as it is, in his day at that time. All the stories are written kind of in the time that they were written. And so, like, as time goes on, we see, Wolfe, we start out in the first book seeing Wolfe finally being free of prohibition and finally getting a non-black market beer.
Yeah.
But later on, we see things like World War II have an effect. We see things like, even stuff like the kind of the hippie culture of the 1960s ends up being part of the Nero Wolfe stories when they're being written. And so each of the stories is a product of its time, which is something that a lot of writers, it's not true of a lot of writers, where they'll like, oh, I'll write this story about something that happened 20 years ago, or I'll write a story about something that, this or that. Stout had to continually polish his craft because his stories were constantly happening in different settings with different availability of technology and stuff like that.
Although the age of the characters didn't really change all that much.
No, they're very Simpsons-esque in that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas, like you said, everything... He wrote those books, what, from like the 1930s to 1970 something?
1933 through 1974 when he died, yeah.
Yeah, so 70 novels or something like that, I believe. Nero Wolfe novels.
It's something ridiculous like that. I might be off by a couple of years on when he died, but yeah, it's something like that.
But Archie is always well, I don't want to say a young man. I mean, it's implied that he's like, mid to late 20s in the novels. I don't think they ever say his age, but he stays that age from the 1930s all the way to the 1970s. And Wolfe stays an older curmudgeon.
Yeah.
For that same time period, probably 50s or so.
Yeah, I've seen that there were efforts to make like television and radio shows, and for that they did ask Rex Stout like what age the characters should appear to be, and yeah, you're basically right. Wolfe is in his early 50s or late 40s, and Archie's kind of late 20s to early 30s.
It is kind of. You can kind of see it from their attitudes and the way that they're described. But they pretty much are the same characters from start to finish. I mean, Archie has a little bit of a change from the first book to the next couple, and he changes a bit over time. Nero Wolfe,
sure.
I'm not so sure Nero Wolfe changes quite as much as Archie, but he's a solid character from the beginning. It was probably easier for Rex Stout to write him than to write Archie, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, Archie is much more in tune with like current events and stuff like that too. So, yeah.
But anyway, we have a mystery here. Clyde Osgood is murdered, and now
and the way that Wolfe handles the local police is actually really cool in this book. Like a lot of the times, Wolfe is either like straight up antagonistic, and sometimes he's like just downright incorrigible. But in this one, he's actually kind of like incorrigible with a layer of helpfulness. It's very weird, right? Because he and Osgood and Archie go to meet Waddle, who is either the district attorney or the sheriff or something like that. He's a major law enforcement officer in the county. And
I believe he was the district attorney.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so, and like, it's funny because Wolfe says like, oh yeah, I knew that this was a murder last night. And Waddle's like, why didn't you tell anyone? And Wolfe's like, you know as well as I do that the products of my cerebral processes are owned by me and not by you or the state. I didn't keep the bull from you. I didn't keep the weapon from you. I just looked at these things and I assumed that that a good police officer would make similar conclusions. Possibly, it's not my job to shine your shoes for you. And so, like in this conversation, it's great because Wolfe basically breaks down the whole modus operandi of the murder without having seen anything but after the murder, and it's really brilliantly done. I'm not sure how much of it we want to spoil, but Wolfe manages to convince somewhat Waddle that there's a murder here, and I have good reasons, and there's evidence that you guys have missed about this, and this definitely needs to be taken care of. And at the same time, he's like, I'm not sure what your capacity is, Mr. Waddle. I'm not trying to put one over on you, but at the same time, I'm not going to produce answers when I'm not asked about them or anything like that. It's a really interesting conversation. It's one of the most interesting conversations with law enforcement in a Wolfe book, and
he has a lot of them.
And he has a lot of them. Many of them with Kramer. But like this one's really special for some reason. Like I always remember it very fondly as like this was really well done. With Wolfe Wolfe isn't at home, so he's got to kind of like balance the scales somewhat and be diplomatic, and he usually isn't. And so like seeing the way that Wolfe believes diplomatic looks is kind of fun. Because it's not perfectly diplomatic, but you can see that he's trying.
Yeah. He's at odds with his own personality on those ones.
Yeah.
He kind of sums up what probably happened with the murder really early in the story. And then you're left with the rest of the story where it's actually the good working assumption that you have during this time, but all of the elements are missing. Like there's
Yeah.
There's discussion of how it seems like he might have been clubbed over the head and dragged to the meadow after
Yeah.
being murdered,
Yeah.
or possibly
Yeah.
murdered in the meadow, but instead of by the bull, he was murdered.
Well, he was
with...
definitely murdered in the meadow, but he may have been clonked over the head before he was in the meadow.
Yeah, so he wasn't coerced to go into this meadow where this dangerous bull was in any way.
And this is important because Wolfe makes the point that, like, because he didn't go into the meadow of his own volition, there must be a murder going on here, even if the bull had, impaled him somewhat, right? It would be because he was put there. And in fact, Wolfe actually says, I examined the murder weapon, and everybody just kind of jaw drops, and they're like, "What do you mean you examined the murder weapon and you didn't?"
Oh, that was
tell
a
anyone?
great part of the story.
Yes, yeah.
I loved how
Go
he says he examined the murder weapon, and they're just like, "What are you talking about?" And then he says, "Oh yeah, so like they're digging this fire pit to have this barbecue for this bull. There's shovels and pickaxes right over there."
Yeah.
It occurred to Wolfe that if it wasn't a bull's horn that impaled him, we'll get to why that is in a minute.
Right.
Then what was it? Well, it could likely be some kind of tool like a pickaxe. So he went and examined the tools, and one of the pickaxes was soaking wet with water surrounding it on the ground, which led to a bunch of people conjecturing. Well, I don't know if it was a bunch of people. I think maybe it was was it Waddle or someone was
Waddle,
conjecturing that, okay, well, there's nothing strange about someone washing off a tool, so this doesn't really say anything.
Well,
and then
Waddle is kind of stuck in his routine. He's like, "Did you question anyone about the pick?" And Wolfe is like, "No, I didn't question anyone about if they had washed a pickaxe at 11. At 11
that was
PM
the best
at night.
part about it. It was like,
he's like, if you think that it's a good idea to go looking for a legitimate nocturnal pick washer, then you go ahead. But I assume that pick was washed for nefarious reasons."
Yeah, it was the way he built up to it, where you have this police officer that's like, well, this doesn't really say anything, and then Nero Wolfe spells it out clear as day. No, who washes a pickaxe at 11 o'clock at night?
Right.
One of the great things about reading the Nero Wolfe books is that Rex Stout likes to give you that. He likes to give you these little moments where Nero Wolfe has this minor victory in saying something that a lot of times is very obvious once he's said it. And nobody in the story seems to have picked up on it except him and occasionally Archie.
Right. Well, he likes to set up these situations where the police have a reason why they aren't interested in investigating this murder. And so, like, this is one of the master classes in how to do that. You have a guy who is the district attorney who finds a bull with blood on its horns and a dead man near the bull, and the bull was poking at the dead man, and he says, case closed. But then Wolfe just brings in all of this information, and he's so overwhelmed by it that he kind of half doesn't believe it, right? We're like, throughout the whole book, Waddle is like trying to find a way out. Because Waddle, number one, might not be able to solve the murder. And number two, Waddle is hoping that maybe there's some way for him to avoid, like, losing face in the next election. And then there's also the additional aspect that Osgood funded Waddle's opponent in the previous election, so Waddle and Osgood are already at odds to a certain degree. There's a lot of little bits like that make these books so much fun to read. Because, like, you wouldn't expect there to be all these little layers, but there they are. And each of them is, like, kind of not just placed at random, but placed in a way to make the reader have certain implications and certain assumptions and stuff like that. It's really well done. Like, it just always is.
Oh, yeah, and, the layers are... There's a lot more layers than just what we've described already. I mean, we didn't even get into the rivalry, or rather the discord between Thomas Pratt and Frederick Osgood. In fact, one of the things that happens when Clyde Osgood is making his bet that the bull won't be eaten is he accuses Thomas Pratt of putting on this publicity stunt, not to help his restaurants, but because he's kind of sticking it to his father.
Right.
And that is one of the things that, again, it's a little detail that gives you a whole new list of reasons why anyone could have been the killer in this story.
Yeah, there's also the moment where, what's her name?
Caroline?
Osgood's daughter calls Pratt Monte Cristo.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they
Yeah,
refer to him
like,
as Monte Cristo,
yeah.
and Frederick Osgood actually refers to Thomas Pratt directly as Monty when they're
No,
talking.
no. That's Monty McMillan.
Wait,
Osgood
was his name Monty
specifically only.
McMillan?
Yeah, his name's Monty McMillan. Osgood never calls Pratt anything other than Pratt or an unkind insult.
Oh, I'll be danged. I got that mixed up.
No,
The
it's easy to
whole
mix up. Yeah.
the whole last half of the book. Every time I read Monty, I thought that it was them directly talking to Thomas Pratt, calling him Monty. I don't know
No.
how I
Monty is
managed
Monty
to do that.
McMillan. Monty McMillan is the guy who used to own Caesar.
Yeah,
And this is another really cool little layered thing because Monty McMillan was a very well-known cattle rancher, and Pratt went up to him and said, "I want to buy your one of your best bulls. I'm going to kill it and eat it." And Monty's like, "Hell no." And then, all of a sudden, Monty McMillan's herd gets hit by an anthrax wave and many of his cattle die. And so at that point, Monty is almost destitute. And Monty goes back to Pratt and Pratt says, "I'll give you $45,000 for Hickory Caesar Grindon." And Monty says, I told you to get the hell off my property last time, but I'm in such a bad shape now, or such a bad state now, that I guess I'm going to have to accept. And then there's the additional aspect of like Monty McMillan being part of the Guernsey League,
yeah.
and the Guernsey League being mad at Monty McMillan for this. And then there's this whole plot to like pay Pratt back all of the money and get Hickory Caesar Grindon given to someone else. And then like Monty McMillan is going to keep most of the money. And so Monty McMillan just gets a bunch of free money out of this deal. And then they insult Monty as well. And so Monty backs out of that. It's a really, really cool little bunch of layers that go on to this whole cattle ranching culture that, probably as a reader, you know nothing about. There's a guy named Bronson, and they're asking him, and Wolfe asks him, "Have you ever been around cattle?" And Bronson's response is something like, "I know only where beef and milk come from because I read it in a book somewhere."
Yeah, the argument that they have that leads up to all of that is early in the book too, and so you get a feel for what all of these gentlemen's dispositions are right away in the story. Yeah. And a lot of times, even when there's heated arguments between characters, some of the characters may be overheated and others may be like, well, yeah, I'm angry with this person, but it's nothing that's like, it's still something we can be gentlemanly about. And you see various levels
it is appalling.
Of... Yeah. Yeah, lots of different levels of how people deal with one another. And so you never really know where the murderer would stand in these novels, because it could be a murderer being extra angry or extra nice just to throw everyone off. And Rex Stout doesn't do what a lot of people in mystery writing will do. He doesn't give you like these... He has red herrings in his stories, but he doesn't give you these glaring red herrings where it's like, oh, this person really, really obviously had to have been the one to do this, and lead you down that path for a while, and then it's like, oh, I'm pulling the rug out from under you. He doesn't really do that. He just has these characters that are acting in a way that... Or no, like Caroline Pratt, when... No, I think I'm wrong. What was Osgood's daughter's name?
Oh, man. I was trying to remember it earlier.
Was it Marcy, or...
Marcy was his wife, I believe.
Yeah. No, so, well, whoever it was, there was that moment in the story where Nero Wolfe was accepting he was going to help solve the murder, or it was suggested that he might help, and the daughter kind of tensed up, and you're like, oh, well, she knows something, obviously. And
it's Nancy Osgood, yeah.
And you get this impression that like, oh, does she know something about the murder? But when you find out what it is that she does know, it's like, well, wait, so what does she know about the murder, if anything? And the whole time it's like you're not really led to believe that she's the murderer, but you're just you're given a hint that she knows something that Nero Wolfe might want to know.
Well, there's this great moment where Wolfe is expounding to Waddle about what happened, he's like, it is possible that he was clubbed over the head and then transported into the pasture either by a man or two men or a man and a woman or barely possibly a woman by herself. It's like, thanks a lot, Wolf. You've really narrowed it down for us.
Well, it's interesting that he did it that way, though, because
Yeah.
it tells you a lot about who he suspects as the detective who is ultimately going to solve the case. And so you have to kind of use him as a guidepost for where your thinking goes, too. And so by implying this, well, now they have this situation where I believe it was Nancy Osgood that, or was it the Pratt niece that was the championship golfer?
Pratt's niece, Caroline, is the championship golfer. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you do have a woman who's athletic. So now Nero Wolfe has actually described a situation where it still leaves just about anyone as a possible assailant in this story.
Right.
So, but that's like the way that it's brought up. You're not immediately given this one little divot where you slide down and you're like, oh, well, it looks like Caroline Pratt has to be the murderer then. It's like, no, he gives you 4 distinct scenarios, one of which Caroline Pratt fits, and he doesn't weigh one down more than the other. And I love the way he does that. You really, when you're reading these stories, there are times in Nero Wolfe stories where Nero Wolfe makes it clear who the murderer is, say, halfway through the story. And then it's about, well, how are we going to catch him or prove it?
Right.
But when he doesn't do that, which I think that's more rare than not, when he's not doing that, he always has suspicions over pretty much everyone in the story.
Yeah.
Like the only person that was above suspicion for the most part was Frederick Osgood.
Right.
And of course the police, but they never really count as characters who, I don't know, sometimes maybe, but they don't really count as characters who could be the murderers. Wasn't there a story where that was like one of the twists?
Yes.
Yeah. So not often, but for the most part, there you go.
Or murderer or victim, I forget which. Maybe both.
Oh, well, no, wasn't there a story where one of the 3 major police characters was a victim?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got one there, but I'm not sure about I mean, there is one that I really don't want to spoil for anyone that where there is a...
We're only spoiling this particular Wolf book.
Yeah, there is a story where a police-esque character is actually the criminal, but that's all I'm going to say. It's because it's too much of a treat to read.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think we need to do this in at least 2 parts, possibly 3.
Yeah.
So
we're just going to keep going until we're done.
Well, I'm not so sure that's a good idea. I can't do that. But we should definitely continue this with our next one. What do you think?
I agree. Absolutely.
All right, sounds great. Maybe we can turn it into 6. Maybe we can make this the wildly overstated Some Buried Caesar. This is now the Wordy Pair Presents Some Buried Caesar podcast.
The Some Buried Caesar podcast.
All right. The Wordy Buried Caesar podcast.
Are we going to stop here for today?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got a good start. We'll get into the Osgoods and the Clydes and the feuds and everything next time and expound a little more on what is going down in mystery solving land.
Good stuff. All right, everybody. Well, this has been yet another episode of the Wordy Pair podcast, and we are doing a deep dive into Some Buried Caesar. Hopefully not into the piles that were found around Caesar. We'll try to dive into something else, like the mystery.
Yeah, we don't want to slip and fall on our Pratts.
That's true.
And we definitely don't want to end up raising Woonies.
And you don't know the meaning of ipso facto. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time with some more Some Buried Caesar goodness.
Oh, do I get to do it?
Sure.
All right, until next time. I'm Rudy.
I'm Justin.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's at Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, at Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.